I chose to develop the characterization of my protagonist Tina from Bridget Jones, a comic character in Bridget Jones's diary. She's famous for her search for love. However, the plot arc of Bridget Jones is far more optimistic than my film, as the film ends in a happy ever after clinch, typical of the romantic genre. I felt the narrative closure in Bridget Jones was not authentic in terms of real life, and I wanted to challenge the romantic genre of my model by choosing to end the film in a more unresolved way. I wanted to construct an ending which would allow me to create a narrative which I think is much more true to life and poignant. Fiction is stimulated by reality, and this is similar in the case of my short film. The experiences of my protagonist are based on my aunt's own real experiences on Match.com, but I have dramatized and developed these cinematically, using codes and conventions from a number of models. During my research and planning, I watched a short film called About a Girl, developed around a young girl's monologue, as she speaks directly to the camera. This film helped me decide the genre of my short film. My first concept for my short was to present it in a documentary genre, as it is based on real experiences. However, as I was planning to dramatise some of the incidents and invent others, I wanted the film to be a drama. About a Girl gave me that crossover, as it had a documentary feel, but it's fictional. This style enabled me to achieve the authenticity I wanted in my film. From About a Girl, I got the idea of using a non-diegetic narration for the monologue of my main character. However, in my film, this is in the style of a voiceover. This technique allowed me the freedom to shift into the past through flashbacks, and allows the audience to have access to the main character's own internal thoughts and musings. I directed my actress to speak as if she were thinking, so there was a spontaneity in her voice which I felt made the film authentic. I also used the codes and conventions of Bridget Jones's diary to help me develop my short film. I used the opening sequence of Bridget Jones, in which she sits alone drinking wine and singing along to the well-known ballad All By Myself, to help me develop the sequence in my film in which Tina sits alone on the sofa, drinking a cup of tea. During the process of editing this part of the film, I sequenced a series of shots where the camera gets ever closer to Tina, until it reaches an extreme close-up. I did this so the audience would gain a sense of intimacy with the character. I developed the audience's relationship with Tina in my film even further by cutting to a mid-shot of Tina looking in at herself. Using this symbolic image of her, I felt I was highlighting how lonely she feels. And unlike Bridget Jones, my film evokes pathos for the protagonist as opposed to comic distance. On reflection, I believe the climax of my film, which is the scene where Tina is attacked, should be more like this scene from Thelma and Louise, which is a dramatic film. Thelma's attack is more brutal than Tina's in my film, and the camera stays much closer to the action, underlining Thelma's fear more powerfully. My attack scene was shot from a long distance, as it was a way of highlighting how Tina wants to forget about what happened to her. It is presented to the audience as an event in her memory, rather than a moment in a chronological narrative. It was difficult to achieve a realistic depiction of aggressive behaviour in close-up, as my actors were not real, and despite my directing they felt self-conscious. In the end, the actual scene was much shorter and less intense than I had planned it to be. I used two songs throughout the duration of my film. I Love You is used at the start and at the end so as to underline the circular structure of the narrative. We had to use copyright-free music, and I felt this was a constraint on my creativity. However, this song seemed perfect for what I wanted to achieve. The words, which consist of I want you, I need you, highlight Tina's longing to find love, and by the end of the film the song acts as a bitter irony as she remains alone. The circular narrative is further signalled by the repeated over-the-shoulder shot of Tina sitting on the park bench alone. I use the song Bluebird when Tina is getting dressed in the middle of the film. The acoustic guitar is delicate and soft, yet maintains a sense of hope. The ambiguity of the music is the exact effect I wanted, as I didn't want the audience to guess what the ending of the film would be. It is a common technique to use a non-diegetic soundtrack and diegetic sounds in films to enhance emotional impact of the scene, and to foreshadow events to come, and in this case I have definitely used this convention from real media models. Similar to the 2006 film Scenes of a Sexual Nature, which is entirely set in a park, focusing on the lives of 6 couples, I chose to open my film with a long shot of an array of couples walking together through a park lane. Through this edit, I wanted to highlight our static protagonist from the bustling couples moving forward in their lives. The recent film Never Let Me Go uses the ellipsis technique throughout the film to give us background into the narrative which the protagonist introduces us to in the opening of the film. It also helps explain how the characters have arrived where they are now. In essence, the opening of the film sets up a series of questions which are answered throughout the rest of the narrative. I use the ellipsis technique in my film as a means of allowing the audience to learn more about Tina's past. It also acts as a visual representation of Tina's memories, which she is recollecting in this scene. Here, Tina reminisces about past dates, and to highlight the past from the present, I used a grainy old movie effect, which I added on in post-production.
And if you forgot to mention his alcohol dependency.
Through my study of Bridget Jones, which is obviously loosely based on the classic romantic novel Pride and Prejudice, I started to think about the use of intertextuality in films, and how it is often an effective technique used to underline key thematic elements. However, whereas my model adapted and adopted key characters and plot twists from its literary original, I decided to use mise-en-scène and an actual copy of Wuthering Heights as a prop in the opening sequence. I chose this novel as it is one of the most famous love stories, but also one of the most tragic stories ever written. The choice of book foreshadows Tina's disappointing end as she never finds true love. This visual prop will hopefully implicitly communicate to the audience the two key themes of love and loss. In post-production, I noticed I could have strengthened the use of the book even further by showing it in another close-up shot. This would underline the significance of the novel the woman reads, and perhaps suggest to the audience that Tina's most stable and satisfying relationship in the film is with a text about love rather than love itself. The choice of mise-en-scène and the cutaway shot showing the pictures of Tina's 3 children as she is getting dressed for her first date after 2 months is also very important, as it makes the viewer aware that she has 3 young children who are always on her mind, even while she looks for love. This narrative tension between who she is and who she wants to be is much more ambiguous and true to life than Bridget Jones's situation, in which the audience is asked to imagine that a successful romance will completely transform her life for the better. It is important for us to be aware of this, as Tina's role as a mother is what makes finding love so challenging. There is a constant tension between her desire to be a good mother and also to find true love for herself beyond her family, in contrast with the character of Bridget Jones, who is untethered by responsibilities. This underlines what I wanted to achieve in my film, which was to evoke the romantic genre, while also inviting the audience to challenge and critique it.